He read the email again. After careful consideration, we've decided to move forward with another candidate. Ethan had waited for that promotion for months. He had worked late nights, skipped weekends, prayed before every meeting. It wasn't just about the money. It was about meaning. That job was supposed to be the proof that all his effort, all his faith, all his patience had been worth it. So when the answer came back no, it felt like heaven had turned silent. He whispered, "God, why would you close this door?" That night he sat in the dim light of his apartment. Bills were stacked on the table, his coffee was cold, and his confidence was gone. He wasn't angry at his boss. He was angry at God. Because deep down, he didn't just lose a job. He lost the version of himself he had built around progress, the next title, the next raise, the next goal. And now it all stopped. The noise of ambition went quiet. And in that silence, he started hearing questions he had long ignored. What if success isn't the goal? What if wisdom is? Weeks passed. Ethan still showed up to work, still prayed, but his words felt heavy. He didn't stop believing in God. He just stopped believing God was listening. Every morning he checked his phone, hoping for something new, a sign, an answer. But the notifications stayed the same. Nothing. One Sunday, while sitting in church, he heard the pastor say, "Sometimes God delays the promotion because He's promoting your character first." Those words felt like they were aimed directly at him. He realized that he had been asking for increase, but not for insight. The next day, while scrolling through his phone at work, he came across Proverbs 16:9. "In their hearts humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps." He had read it before, but this time it felt personal. He realized he had spent years asking God to bless his plans, but never asked if they were his. And maybe that was the problem. He wanted direction without surrender. He wanted God's help, but not his leadership. 3 weeks later, the company announced a sudden restructuring. The man who had received the promotion, the job Ethan wanted so badly, was laid off, along with half the department. Ethan stared at the news, stunned. The door he had begged God to open was the very door God had locked to protect him. And in that moment, he finally understood. God's delay wasn't rejection, it was redirection. He took a deep breath and said quietly, "Okay, God, maybe you're not late. Maybe I was early." If this message is already speaking to you, take a moment to subscribe and stay with us. Every day we share wisdom from Proverbs, stories that strengthen your faith and guide your finances. Ethan began to see the pattern. Every disappointment, every "not yet," every unanswered prayer had been God's way of preparing him. What he once called delay, heaven called design. What he saw as failure, God saw as formation. He started journaling every morning, writing down his prayers and the lessons he was learning. He called the notebook Lessons in the Waiting. Page after page, he wrote small reminders. Patience is the proof of trust. God's silence is still speech. Wisdom always comes before wealth. He began starting his mornings with Proverbs instead of emails. He wrote verses on sticky notes and placed them around the house, on his fridge, his mirror, even his dashboard. One of them said, "Many are the plans in a person's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails." Proverbs 19:21. Slowly, his question changed. He stopped asking, "Why me?"
and started asking, "What for?" And in that simple shift, peace began to grow again. He also began managing his money differently. He learned to save without fear, to give without pride, and to trust that God could multiply even the little he had. He started to see that stewardship is worship, and that wisdom was wealth in another form. 2 months later, an email arrived. A smaller company offering him a position with less pay but more purpose. He almost deleted it, but something in his heart whispered, "This time, follow my steps." He said yes. Within 6 months, that smaller opportunity became the biggest blessing of his career. He was mentoring people, helping families, and leading projects that actually mattered. He realized that God had not delayed him, He had developed him. Ethan often said, "If I had gotten that promotion, I would have lost my peace." God wasn't withholding success, He was building strength. Proverbs 3:5-6 says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your paths straight." That verse stopped being a verse. It became a lifestyle. Because when you trust God's timing, you stop forcing doors open. You stop chasing what fades and start resting in what lasts. You start realizing that peace is better than promotion, and wisdom is better than wealth. One evening, his old boss called him for coffee. They talked about the past, about the irony of life, about how sometimes losing what you wanted leads you straight into what you needed. At the end of the conversation, his boss said, "You know, I always thought you deserved that job." Ethan smiled and replied, "I did, but not in that season. God was still building me for what was next." He walked home that night under the quiet sky, and for the first time in a long time, his heart was light, because he finally understood that waiting wasn't wasting, it was working. Maybe today you're where Ethan once was, waiting, tired, staring at a door that won't open. You've prayed, worked, believed, and all you hear is silence. But what if that silence is protection? What if the delay is mercy in disguise? God's "not yet" is not no. It's "I'm preparing something better." Because what's built quickly rarely lasts, but what's built by faith always stands. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who's waiting for their breakthrough, and turn on notifications so you never miss a moment of wisdom and peace. You just spent 8 minutes for God, 8 minutes to grow in wisdom, faith, and peace. See you tomorrow. Verse for your meditation, Proverbs 16:9. In their hearts, humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps.